After the launch of the British battleship Dreadnought, an order of magnitude superior to all the warships of the time, started one of the largest naval arms race in the history of shipbuilding, Dreadnought fever. It did not bypass the United States, which, having built its first dreadnoughts of the South Carolina and Wyoming types, began to create ships of the next stage of evolution, super dreadnoughts, of the New York type, which includes the USS Texas. This ship, with no serious damage, went through 2 wars and was awarded 5 battle stars and numerous other honors. The Texas is now permanently moored in Houston at the port of San Jacinto and is the world's only museum ship representing the Dreadnought era. Construction and launching. In 1910-1911, the project of a new series of dreadnoughts with 14-inch main caliber guns was developed. On April 17, 1911, at the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Commerce Shipyard in Virginia, the keel of the lead ship of the series, battleship Montbéliard 35, was laid. Construction of the ship lasted a little over a year. The ceremonial launching of the dreadnought, named Texas, took place on May 18, 1912. About 15,000 people gathered to watch this event, and for the first time the launching of the ship was filmed. Then the battleship was completed and on March 12, 1914 finally joined the U.S. Navy. At the time of construction, it could be considered the most powerful warship in the world. Its construction cost almost $11 million, which was a colossal sum for that time. Main characteristics. The main argument of any battleship, its main caliber. The Texas was the first to use 14-inch guns and 5 2-gun turrets. Compared to the 12-inch guns of the first dreadnoughts, these were the most powerful guns at the time. The maximum angle of elevation of the guns was 15 degrees, and the range of fire was 21 kilometers. Placement of the main caliber turrets according to the linear elevated scheme made it possible to use the full power of the ship in the onboard salvo. The battleship was also armed with auxiliary caliber artillery. At the time of entry into service, it was installed 21 guns of 127 millimeters caliber, 2 batteries of 10 guns on each side and 1 gun on the stern. They were quite rapid-firing and excellent for fighting destroyers. Later, their number was reduced several times to strengthen the air defense of the ship. Battleship anti-aircraft artillery was classic for its time. At that time, aviation was not considered a threat to ships, so the Texas was installed several small-caliber guns, which were not very effective in shooting at aerial targets. The ship also had torpedo armament, consisting of 4 torpedo tubes of caliber 533 mm, located below the waterline, 2 on each side. Armor Texas was made by a distributed scheme, when armor plates covered not only the central part of the battleship, but also the extremities. The thickness of the battleship armor corresponded to its main caliber. It was a blade to reflect the same volley as the ship itself. Separately, the ship was equipped with a triple expansion steam engine, despite the fact that at that time most ships were equipped with a steam turbine. The choice was made in favor of reliability and durability, which resulted in a slight loss in running speed. History of the service and the First War. The service history of the Texas began almost immediately after entering service in 1914. Not having had time to fully pass all the tests, he was sent south and joined a specially formed squadron of the Atlantic Fleet, which participated in the blockade of the Mexican port of Veracruz. Texas, along with other ships of the squadron, patrolled the Gulf of Mexico, covering the landing of the landing force. After the completion of the operation, the battleship returned home and was based on the Atlantic coast of the United States and carried peaceful service. The ship's calling card was the excellent training and marksmanship of the gun crews. The battleship's crew won many competitions for accuracy. The United States entered World War I only in April 1917, So, until the end of the war, the service of the Texas was not full of significant events. It was mainly engaged in escorting Allied convoys and also participated in maneuvers together with British battleships. Combat episodes for the battleship were limited to a few contacts with submarines, which never once managed to damage it. After the end of the war and the signing of the peace treaty, Texas participated in the escort of the interned German fleet to the English port of Scapa Flow. Interesting fact, in August 1918, the battleship was visited by future U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt, who was then Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Between the wars after World War I, due to the growing influence of Japan, it was decided to strengthen the U.S. Navy in the Pacific. In 1919, Texas, together with her sister ship New York, were relocated to the base in San Diego, which became their home for 16 years. In 1922, after signing the Washington Agreement on Limitation of Naval Armaments, the USA decided not to build new battleships, but to modernize the existing ones. The modernization of the Texas took place in 1925-1927 in Norfolk Dry Dock and was the most extensive in the history of the battleship service. During the modernization were completely redesigned superstructures, removed torpedo tubes, strengthened anti-torpedo protection and armor, installed a new fire control system, as well as the transition from coal to oil fuel. All these changes allowed Texas to become a ship that met the requirements of the time. In 1937, she was relocated to the East Coast as the flagship of the Atlantic Squadron. World War II. For Texas, the Second World War was as full of combat episodes as possible. In 1939-1940, it participated in the escort of Allied convoys as part of the so-called Neutral Patrol. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the Texas, located at that time in Norfolk, underwent accelerated modernization with significant strengthening of anti-aircraft artillery. He continued to serve in the North Atlantic, covering convoys from German U-boats. In the fall of 1942, the battleship participated in Operation Torch Yi, the landing of Allied forces in French Morocco and Algeria. It carried out support of the landing force, shelling firing positions, tanks, and roads along which reinforcements were moved. A significant event in the career of Texas was participation in Operation Overlord Yi, the Allied landings on the Normandy coast in the summer of 1944. The battleship was part of a squadron that supported the landing with naval artillery fire. In addition to the main caliber, auxiliary artillery was also used. 127mm guns, Texas destroyed infantry, machine gun nests, and enemy vehicles. During the operation, the battleship fired about 700 main and 300 auxiliary caliber shells, providing significant support to the paratroopers, who were able to successfully gain a foothold on the shore and expand the beachhead. After completing the Normandy operation, the Texas participated in the capture of the port of Cherbourg, where it engaged in a duel with the German battery Hamburg. During this event, the battleship was damaged for the only time in her career. A German 204mm shell hit the fighting deckhouse, destroying all unarmored structures. Soon another shell of the same type hit the ship from the port side, but without exploding, lodged in the cabin of one of the officers. At the same time, the Texas managed to destroy one of the German guns by return fire. After completion of service in Europe, the battleship was sent to the Pacific Ocean, where it participated in the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, supporting the landing with artillery fire. With the end of the war, the service of the Texas did not end. He took part in Operation Magic Carpet, bringing more than 5,000 American soldiers back to the homeland. End of service. After the end of the war, most old battleships were either dismantled for scrap or became targets for nuclear weapons testing. But Texas had a rare luck. it was decided to leave as a memorial to the two world wars. On April 21, 1948, the old battleship was officially excluded from the U.S. Navy and handed over to the authorities of the state of Texas as a museum ship. Texas entered service before the outbreak of World War I and is currently the last surviving dreadnought and the only battleship of the U.S. Navy, which during World War II participated in 3 major theaters of war in Africa, Europe, and the Pacific. Having passed through 2 wars without serious damage and being permanently moored in Houston, she is still in service, preserving the history of the fleet of the first half of the 20th century.